Good morning and welcome to the inaugural NGSIS Technical Forum. My name is Robert Jordan. I'm the Manager of Business Intelligence in the Enterprise Application and Systems Integration Group. And I'm joined by a man you all know well, Frank Boshoff, the Solution Architect in ITS. Today we're going to talk to you briefly about an NGSIS overview. Does anyone not know what NGSIS is? Fantastic. So we'll skip over that as fast as we can. And then we're going to talk to you about the data decision and support system, which we gave you a handout on earlier. So as I said, we're going to briefly skip over a NGSIS overview. I'm going to give you all a minute or two to read that because, well, I can't really read it from this position. Yep. How do I do that? Just bear with us while my assistant there is working with the lights.
That was it. Wonderfully executed, Frank. Thank you.
Can I ask, does anyone here extract data from Rosie currently using Rocket Shuttle or another tool? Oh, quite a few people. And there are those of you who don't, do you work with someone who extracts data from Rosie using Rocket Shuttle? So pretty much everyone. Fantastic. So this is the NGSIS overview. I'm going to move on to this, to a quick summary of the Java conversion project.
One of the biggest projects happening right now at the University of Toronto is the NGSIS Platform Modernization Project. NGSIS is improving the Rosie administrative database with better server technology and a refreshed codebase to revitalize the student information system. Think of the current Rosie system as a single-track gravel road. It can be a slow and difficult journey to implement new services like Acorn and Degree Explorer. But we know Rosie will do a much better job supporting our services when that old gravel road becomes a paved modern highway for student information. After project completion, 15,000 students will be able to access the system via Acorn simultaneously. Currently, Acorn can only accommodate 700 concurrent users at a time. A new codebase will allow for friendlier file management using an interface similar to Windows Explorer. The new platform even opens up the potential for live integration between divisional systems and Rosie. So how do we replace Rosie's roads? By converting Rosie's 2 million lines of code into Java and switching our mainframe to faster Linux servers. Changes to the Rosie interface will be minimal, and we expect staff will find it easy to adapt. This flexible platform will help Rosie evolve into a vast, intricate network and help U of T stay at the forefront of technological innovation. For more information, visit sis.utoronto.ca/NGSIS.
So I guess if the business intelligence doesn't work out, I can get a job as a voice actor. So this is just a list of the executive sponsorship, and then I'm just going to move on to the next slide, which is the project schedule. So you can see right now, we're here in this testing phase, system testing, system integration testing, and performance testing. Oh, we've got 2 pointers, that's helpful. You can see the next phase here, obviously go live and go live support is out to November and December. And Frank, not to put you on the spot, but will there be a libation or two on the holiday break?
Jeez, I just want to get some sleep.
So I think that was a coded yes. So for the rest of the presentation, unless anyone has any questions about the NGSIS overview, we're going to talk about the data decision support system, which I've been calling D2S2 because I'm a complete geek, but I don't think Frank's too keen on Star Wars. So we'll see how it goes. So first of all, I asked earlier, hands up who takes data out of Rosie, and I think pretty much all of you said yes. Has anyone noticed that sometimes it runs a little bit slower, particularly say in September? So I see a lot of hands going up again. So if you see in this chart, this actually shows you the CPU usage for the Rosie mainframe, and you can see here in September, I have this blowout, it actually peaks at about 100%. Does anyone have any idea what might be happening in early September that will cause Rosie to run like that? Registration, right. So what's happening is the students are trying to go in the front end, and at the same time, all you folks are trying to get data out of the back end, and you're basically both using the same resources to accomplish different tasks, and it actually lowers the user experience for the students, and it also lowers the user experience for you guys. So Frank and I have been working on a solution for this, and essentially what we're proposing is that we're going to make a real-time copy of the Rosie production data. And by real time, I mean just like say a second delay, second and a half,
Milliseconds.
milliseconds. You can hold Frank to that. That will be stored in the clouds. It will use a tool called Attunity to what's called replicate the data, as I said, constantly from the Rosie production server into the clouds. It'll be a real-time sync. It'll have a 99% uptime, and you'll be able to access this tool 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It'll also be secure. The data will be secured in a Microsoft data center. There's 2 Microsoft data centers in Canada, one in Front Street in Toronto, and a second one in Quebec City. It'll also be encrypted at rest and in transit. Those of you who are interested, the encryption keys, they update every 90 days. You as end users won't see any of this. It'll all happen in the background, but it'll constantly update the encryption key so that it's always secure. Then the last piece, which I hope is the piece you're most excited about, is that it's what's called elastic. So we can have so much capacity throughout the year, but if I go back to this previous slide, when we get to these points here, where we have these peaks, we can actually just scale up the amount of processing power that we pay Microsoft for. So what will happen is, in busy times, your queries should run at the same speed as they run in off-peak times, because we can scale up the amount of computational power that we're making available. So we're hoping that that will vastly increase your user experience. Who benefits from this? Well, I think the first group to mention, of course, which is why we're all here, is the students. As you guys won't be competing with them for the same resources, it'll make their experience on the front end more seamless. And then Rocket Shuttle users and people who extract data, you'll get faster queries, access to real-time data versus snapshot data, and also eventually, which we'll talk to a little bit later on, access to some more modern tools that will come as part of this, and it's on the handouts. Then the last piece, of course, is for a divisional leader, they'll get access to more up-to-date data to make decisions on, and also the data will be more secure, so there's less risk there. At this point, we're going to go into quite a technical discussion, and those of you who know me will know I'm going to slink off to the side and leave you in this man's very capable hands. Do you need this, or are you okay?
Oh, I'm okay, thank you. All right, okay. These are the diagrams that the architects like. I think what I find really exciting about this solution is that it opens up all sorts of possibilities that we haven't really been able to entertain in the past. How many people here would like that? How many people here have student data that they want to join with Rosie data and analyze across it? Right? Oh my goodness, here we go. Okay, so at the moment, you're expected to download the Rosie data to some system and then join your data with it there and analyze it. I think that's basically the way we operate at the moment. The security guys get a bit nervous about that because the student data is highly confidential, but once it leaves the mainframe, it kind of leaves ITS's control. And, you know, thanks to Governing Council now, the deans are now responsible for the safety of that data in their divisions. This solution provides the possibility of you uploading data into the Azure cloud so that it sits cheek by jowl with the Rosie data and you can analyze it there using something like Tableau or Rocket Shuttle for that matter. So we're finally reaching a point where we can almost centralize data for analytics and reporting, rather than having it leak all over the university and everybody then is responsible for securing the student data. So the way this is going to work, we've got the Rosie database over there. We're introducing this thing called Attunity, which is a data replicator. And what it does is it monitors updates going into the Rosie database via Acorn, Degree Explorer, Rosie itself. And every time there's an insert happening there, it picks up that data and squirts it across and puts it over here into a SQL database in the Azure cloud. That link is going across a site-to-site VPN. So it's encrypted end-to-end all the way through from Rosie to that SQL database. And then there, it's encrypted at rest as well. Now, For the Rocket Shuttle users, you'd use Rocket Shuttle as you, I was going to say as you do today, but it actually is changing as well with the new ROSI system. Rocket Shuttle is now becoming a web-based system. So it's got the same functionality as you have today, but you access it via a browser rather than a desktop client that you have to download, install, and update the configuration and what have you. So you would use this new Rocket Shuttle, which actually runs on a web application server, and it gets pointed across to that SQL database. What that means is that you no longer need to connect to the production database, as Rob was explaining, and suffer the conflict of workloads on that system. There's a slight implication, though. The SQL changes slightly from DB2 to SQL Server, but we'll give you an example of that later. But now there are other possibilities. For example, the divisional applications. So engineering, for example, I know have an ODBC access to the mainframe at the moment. There are not too many divisions that have those ODBC access capability. But now there should be we should be capable of connecting these applications across that link into this SQL database as well. Same security applies as you would with the mainframe, but this is no longer a mainframe. That's becoming a distributed Linux system. But you've got access to real-time data, so you're no longer needing to download data that starts going stale as soon as you've got a copy. So I don't know if, how many would that appeal to? Just give me a quick, oh, okay, all right. Then there are other things that will come in the future as well. We have an Informatica extract, transform, load server. That picks up data from various places across the university. EASI is one of them. It, in the future, could put that data into SQL Server as well. So you can see that there's possibility for this to become a much bigger repository than what ROSI is today. Also with Rocket Shuttle has this concept of personal table spaces. So you can upload an Excel spreadsheet, for example, using Rocket Shuttle. It'll actually create a table for you in a personal table space and store the content there. That's fantastic, but on ROSI, that space is limited at the moment. There are not too many people that can do that. With this, because it's elastic, we can expand that and perhaps open up that capability to people that really need it. Now, there are some other things coming in the future, and I suppose, Rob, you'll talk a little more about that part.
Yes.
Okay. As far as divisional DBAs, report developers go, there's also a possibility now that we can provide the divisions space in this environment, so that you can now store data there and use it along with the ROSI data to analyze across the whole lot. So there are probably a few of you that already store ROSI data, well, not only ROSI data, but unique student data that you have that's pertinent to your division, plus a whole bunch of other stuff in databases. Now it becomes possible for you to consolidate on a platform. And by the way, that doesn't mean you're losing control over the database. Your DBAs have full control and access rights and so on to that area. So it's almost like a shared common environment, but everybody's got their own sort of sysadmin access to that space. Likewise, you've got the easy business intelligence DBAs and report developers and data scientists, and they use the same access path basically across there. We're starting to build this right now. We're starting as a proof of concept to get this going. But we expect that when Rosie cuts over in November and goes live, that we'll then have a live stream going across to the SQL Server database. I think there are about, besides the Rocket Shuttle users, I think there are about 10 divisions that access Rosie directly using ODBC or JDBC. What we'd like to do is transition them over to this, but we'll gather feedback on that and see how many people are keen to jump in.
Right. I'll take questions at the end, or?
No, sure. No, we've got time.
So since we're migrating from mainframes to MSSQL, we have these Rosie IDs which were probably created off of these mainframes. Are those credentials moving over? And the connections, for example, we had enrollment services run nightly open queries against DB to get bulk of information. So is that staying same? Is it changing?
Okay, so from the mainframe, and we haven't really explained this part yet, but from the mainframe, we're moving to a distributed Linux database. And you're familiar with the RACF ID at the moment, or Rosie ID. To log into this system now, you use a U2 ID rather than a RACF ID. Under the covers, the RACF ID or Rosie ID is still used on the database and for audit trails and that sort of thing. If you're going, and if you're using Rocket Shuttle, today you're using the Rosie ID to log in. Mainframe's going away, so then it becomes a U2 ID that you use to access it. So regardless of this project, we're switching from RACF IDs to U2 IDs. And putting this in place means that you just continue to use the U2 ID to access that data.
So in terms of, well, I don't know, it's a network question probably. We have VPNs set up from servers to hook up and we don't get data off. And these RACF IDs are associated, the user IDs are associated with the VPN certificates and the way they're generated and things like that. And that will pretty much seamlessly work the same way. There's barely anything that we have to do.
Same method, but we're probably going to have to update the certificates because the servers are changing, the IP addresses are changing. So all of that will be coordinated between now and probably October. So we've got a list of people that are using those methods using ODBC, and we're contacting them. Some emails have gone out already. And in fact, when this presentation was originally proposed, it was actually to impart the details that you need to connect to DB2 for this new distributed database, distributed Linux system. But this solution cropped up in the last month, and it was just too good to ignore. So I think what we'd like to do is basically sell this rather than providing access to this one. And I think the reasons here is that, and there are many really, the fact that you'll be able to upload your data to that and analyze it using Tableau side by side in one place consistently. That's something we couldn't even offer on a distributed Linux system. So, because we just don't have that elastic scalability. Any other questions right now? Yes. Sure.
Out of the different cloud vendors, were there kind of key factors that chose you to choose Azure over the other ones?
One was the fact that we were already there with Office 365 and the authentication and what have you has already been sorted out to a large extent. The other is that, talking to people around the university, a lot of the divisional DBAs are already familiar with SQL Server to some extent, much more so than DB2. And one of the BI people said to me, well, if you can't beat them, join them. And so it's kind of like, yeah, it's a no-brainer. Yes, there's Postgres and MySQL out there as well. But because the authentication has already mostly been dealt with, and an IRM has been done for Office 365. We're going through the process of another 1 year. But when we embarked on this, the sort of baseline was we need to provide better security than we have at the moment. And I think we've managed that. I mean, we don't do encryption at rest on the ROSI database at the moment. But if we're putting this in somebody else's data center, if somebody swaps out a hard drive, we'd rather know that it's encrypted. But the other advantage here are these divisional applications, and even the web services. I think some of you might have heard me talking about web services that are coming with the new ROSI. We've got one called the Student Info Service, which returns a lot more data than security would like, I suppose. But you provide the API with a student number, and it comes back with the class, the courses that they're enrolled in, and their contact information, and that sort of thing. That's a read-only function. And there's no reason why we couldn't deploy that in Azure and you use it on that platform. So all of these possibilities start coming out of the woodwork. It also means that as a division, you could set up a subscription in Azure, deploy your applications in this environment, and query that database directly. So, you know, it's, these are things that now become considerations, more so than what we've had in the past.
And the application which we can deploy would be Java, PHP, like a bunch of support?
Yeah, Azure actually supports Linux platforms. It's ridiculously simple. A click of a few mouse buttons and you have a server running with a URL and an IP and a certificate and graphs to tell you how it's performing. And, you know, it's
other cloud solutions.
Yeah. You're not limited to just Windows-based systems at all. I think I've covered basically most of this. The scope of the proof of concept is really to get data flowing through the replicator and into this environment, and hooking up Rocket Shuttle to that. And that's the first step. And that should be finished by first week of August, somewhere around there. And then the only thing that's really holding us back is finishing the ROSI migration project and getting the mainframe decommissioned. So that's targeted to happen in middle of November at the moment. So ROSI is going to become a completely web-based system, distributed Linux, DB2 still on the back end. All right. Any other questions? Yes, Andre.
So given that it's somewhat removed to Azure, do you see sometime in the future that the entire ROSI Linux database gets moved to an Azure offering?
Not right now. I also don't think the university is going to end up with just one cloud provider. The university doesn't do things like that. We'll end up with at least two, probably more. And simply from the perspective that we don't want to put all of our eggs in one basket, but also we don't want one vendor to sort of have us by the short and curlies, to use a technical term. I'll hand it over to Rob if there are...
No, you will not.
Any further questions? Okay, so what we did, because the SQL syntax changes slightly between DB2 and SQL Server, we took a couple of select statements here. There are quite a few tools available on the web where you take your SQL statement, cut and paste it into the tool, and it spits out the the SQL Server. These tools basically, you select your source and target database, and it'll convert the SQL for you. So you don't have to sit there and laboriously change every single SQL query by hand. And it does for the most part, there's not much difference. Some of the sort of non-SQL objects are a bit different, and you might notice that it doesn't actually get it quite right, because even on SQL Server, there's no table called sysibm.dual. So, it's not perfect, but it does help to a large extent. Okay, and
So I have the colorful slide. So that's today. That's the communication session. Next, we're going to start a pilot session in September. If anyone would like to play around with this environment, just email us at data@utoronto.ca and we can set you up as part of the pilot group. And as Frank mentioned, there is going to be some minor changes to your SQL code. So we are going to set up workshops for Rocket Shuttle users probably in late September, October, where if you've converted some code and you're like, hey, this doesn't look quite right, we'll be available to help you answer questions about that. And then we're also going to have a testing and transition period followed by go live support. So once we cut over, there will be people available to answer any questions you have once you're accessing the live data. Anyone got any questions about the timeline? So Frank alluded to that, provided the pilot goes well and there's no technical issues, we are looking at expanding this in the future to add additional offerings. So the first one here is, as Frank mentioned, is a divisional data store. So you could have access to your own SQL server in the cloud that would sit alongside the institutional data store, and you will be able to write queries across them to connect both of your data sets. We're also looking at doing a data lake, which I think we will probably go into more detail at a later time, as a data lake is, I guess, the generation that replaces a data warehouse, where your data isn't all interconnected, but there's a lot more data, and I'm not going to go through that in too much detail today. But the third piece, I think there was a question about why did we go with Azure. One of the offerings that Azure has, which I think a lot of people will be happy with, is that they offer this data science virtual machine. And this is basically a virtual machine that you set up on the Azure network, and it's automatically configured with a wide array of open source tools for analytics. So it has Java, C#, Python, which is open source, TensorFlow, which is from Google, which is a machine learning and AI platform. Does anyone have any interest in machine learning at the moment? One person, two person, three person, four. So we're doing a pilot actually in the BI team at the moment, and we're evaluating Python, TensorFlow, and a couple of other tools as well to see which ones work better, and we'll maybe give you an update about that sometime in the future. So we'll also have access to things like Hadoop and Apache Spark, which are distributed clustering environments for doing massive data analysis. And then obviously things like R and KNIME, which are other data analytics tools, Tableau, and then Jupyter Notebook and Conda for managing our code environments. So these, by and large, are open source tools, and they're free. So you could basically stand up at your own virtual machine. You say, I want this much RAM, I want this much memory. You can do your analysis, use all these different open source tools, and then just close it down when you're finished. And it's all in a secure environment where you don't have to worry about any of your information leaking. So does anyone have any questions about any of these sort of future kind of components? Mohammed?
This is probably the future. When we talk about having all these new service spun up and these applications and deploy and also server, right now we use EIS primarily to develop the infrastructure. So would that sort of be changing off to vendors where we sort of deal with them on an ongoing basis?
So you'll never have to deal with a vendor directly. You'll always come through ITS, and we're always here to support you to make sure that things are as easy for you as possible for the end user. So you'll never have to go to the vendor directly, unless you get tired of working with us. Any other questions? Going once. So that's the end. So if you do have any questions, and if you want to be part of the pilot, do email us at data@utoronto.ca. Thank you very much.